Welcome, everyone. I want you to start off today by doing a little mental exercise with me.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
these.
right. Okay, so I want you to imagine being trapped, but not just physically trapped in a room or, a bad situation.
Right.
I want you to imagine being trapped in your own body and locked into a career that completely contradicts who you fundamentally are on the inside.
That sounds exhausting.
It is.
Hmm.
Picture this. Every single day you go to work and thousands of people, maybe even millions if you count the television cameras, are screaming at you. They are demanding that you perform a version of yourself that literally makes you feel physically sick.
Wow.
You are expected to be aggressive, violent, unyielding, and completely unfeeling. But inside, behind all the armor, you are gentle, deeply anxious, and just longing for a life of quiet authenticity.
Mm.
That is the reality we are stepping into today. Welcome to another deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us to unpack an incredibly moving story.
It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and the scenario you just painted, it's so vivid. It perfectly encapsulates the immense emotional weight of what we're looking at today, because it is a profoundly exhausting way to live, constantly managing the chasm between who you are and who the world demands you to be.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the incredibly complex intersection of professional sports, mental health, queer identity, and the very specific brand of toxic masculinity demanded by professional athletics.
Yes.
We are doing this by looking at a novel. It's titled Tough Guy, which is book 3 in the Game Changer series by Rachel Reid. We are drawing directly from the text of this novel today, looking specifically at the rich character studies, the poignant dialogue, and the striking juxtaposition of our two main characters' worlds.
Rachel Reid has crafted a deeply emotional narrative here, and there's just so much to uncover about the human condition.
There really is. The narrative provides such a nuanced look at the psychological toll of performative masculinity. It forces us to examine how two vastly different people navigate a world that desperately wants to shove them into very rigid, easily digestible boxes.
It's a brilliant exploration of identity and survival.
It really is. So to set the stage for you, let's introduce our two protagonists. First, we have Ryan Price. Ryan is a 6'7", 260-pound, ginger-bearded NHL enforcer who has just been traded to the Toronto Guardians.
He's a massive guy.
Huge. He looks like a Viking or a lumberjack. But underneath that intimidating exterior, Ryan secretly battles severe clinical anxiety and panic attacks. He is terrified of flying, he is incredibly shy, and he is quietly gay in a sport that isn't exactly known for its progressive locker room culture.
To put it mildly.
Right. And then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Fabian Salah. Fabian is an unapologetically queer indie musician and makeup enthusiast. He works at a pharmacy cosmetics counter to pay the bills while he finishes his new album.
He's such a great character.
He is. Fabian is vibrant, he is loud about who he is, and he utterly loathes hockey.
Hates it.
Disguises the macho culture it represents, largely due to his own past experiences, which we will definitely get into. So they could not be more different on paper. Okay, let's unpack this. I want to look at the contrast between public expectations and private realities.
The armor we wear.
Exactly.
Wow.
We all put on a work persona, but the armor these two wear is fascinating. Let's start with Ryan. When we first meet him, he's having a meeting with his new coach in Toronto, Bruce Cooper. And the interaction is incredibly revealing.
It sets the tone for his entire professional life.
It really does. Coach Cooper essentially tells Ryan, "We need you to beat the shit out of opponents who threaten our real players." He explicitly tells him, "We want you to be terrifying on the ice and normal off of it." What does that actually do to a person's psyche over time?
It creates a massive psychological fracture. Think about the instruction itself: be terrifying on the ice and normal off it.
Like it's a switch.
Right. Coach Cooper is demanding that Ryan compartmentalize his humanity. He is treating Ryan's capacity for violence like a light switch that can just be flipped on and off for the crowd's entertainment. But human beings don't work like that. What's fascinating here is the profound irony of Ryan's internal state in that very moment.
Oh, the tense.
Yes. Before he even walks into this meeting with Coach Cooper, Rachel Reid gives us this vivid detail. Ryan pops 4 Tums and scrapes the chalky residue off his teeth.
He's literally giving himself an ulcer just having a conversation with his boss.
Exactly. He is a gentle, shy man, yet his literal job description, the thing he is paid millions of dollars to do, is to inflict physical trauma on other human beings. He is an enforcer. His job is to protect the quote-unquote real players, the goal scorers, the superstars.
I am just trying to picture this. A guy who looks like a mountain of a man, terrified of his own coach, just churning through antacids. So if Ryan is supposed to be this terrifying protector on the ice, how does that translate to his relationships with his own teammates? Does he fit in with the locker room culture at all?
Not even a little bit. And that isolation is a key piece of his invisible prison. When Ryan walks into the locker room and tries to introduce himself to Dallas Kent, the team's superstar, the dynamic is incredibly toxic.
Dallas is awful.
He is. Dallas is sitting there, openly crude, describing his sexual exploits with women in gross, degrading detail and carelessly using homophobic language. Dallas wields his superstar status like a weapon to enforce a very specific, aggressive bro culture.
He doesn't even want to shake Ryan's hand.
No, he looks at him like he's a pile of dead snakes. He just dismissively calls him red.
So how does Ryan handle that? Because physically, Ryan could probably destroy Dallas in a second. He's the enforcer.
Yeah.
But internally, what's happening?
Internally, Ryan shrinks himself. He essentially tries to fold his 6'7" frame into invisibility. He has a whole internal monologue where he is actively talking himself down from a mild panic attack.
Counting his breaths.
Yes. Inhale for 2, exhale for 3. He is doing everything in his power to avoid conflict.
But wait, doesn't he eventually stand up to him?
Only when pushed to the absolute brink. He lets the monster out. He physically straightens his spine to his full height to show Dallas he isn't someone to mess with, but he hates doing it.
It's a performance.
His entire existence in that locker room is a highly calculated performance. He has to stay invisible to protect his own peace, while simultaneously being the most visible, physically intimidating person in the room to keep his job. His armor is his size and his silence. It's an exhausting paradox.
That is exhausting.
Okay.
Now let's look at the other side of the coin. Contrast Ryan's heavy, suffocating armor with Fabian. We get this brilliant introduction to Fabian on the subway. He's surrounded by a sea of obnoxious hockey fans wearing blue Toronto Guardians jerseys.
The enemy.
Right. The atmosphere is hostile. He's being openly sneered at by a dull jock. And Fabian's response to this hostile environment is to wear his identity as brightly as possible.
Not brightly.
Literally brightly. He's wearing still Enchantress glitter and glow, liquid eyeshadow, flawless eyeliner, and nail polish. I read that scene and thought, this is pure, unfiltered bravery. He's a rebel.
Well, let's unpack that a bit. Is it purely bravery, or is there an element of preemptive defense there? If he makes himself a spectacle, if he is the one drawing the eye and defying the norm so aggressively, he's controlling the narrative.
Oh, that's interesting. Like he's daring them to reject him on his own terms, weaponizing his visibility.
Exactly. Fabian has built a life where he refuses to be the victim. When he gets to his job at the Savers Drug Mart makeup counter, he checks his makeup in the mirror and finds genuine joy in it. His armor isn't physical bulk, it's glitter and defiance.
He totally rejects the alpha asshole paradigm.
He does. He completely rejects the paradigm that is currently suffocating Ryan. But it is still armor. It is a way of saying, I see your judgment and I am raising you tenfold.
You really see that active defiance when a little girl in a pink jersey asks him about his violin case. Fabian is so incredibly sweet to her, answering her questions warmly, even while her mother physically pulls her away because she's appalled that Fabian is a man wearing makeup. Fabian refuses to let that mother's judgment dull his sparkle. He just keeps shining.
Think about the environments you navigate in your own life. We all have our armor. Ryan puts on literal body armor and a helmet to go to work and perform violence. Fabian puts on glitter to perform at a drugstore counter and on indie stages, shielding himself from a society that frequently tells queer people to make themselves smaller. The question for all of you listening is your armor protecting you, or is it suffocating you? Because for Ryan, it's definitely the latter.
That brings us to how these two heavily armored people actually collide. Because this isn't just a random meeting in a massive city like Toronto. They actually have a profound history.
A shared trauma, really.
Yeah. The meet-cute happens at the pharmacy where Fabian works. It's late, the store is dead, and in walks Ryan to pick up his anxiety medication. Rachel Reid describes Ryan walking in looking like an autumnal Hagrid in a gray toque and a giant beard.
Such a great description.
I love it. Fabian is sitting on a stool, bored out of his mind, looks up, and immediately recognizes him. 13 years have passed, and he just blurts out his name.
The tension in that scene is palpable. You have Fabian bracing himself. He is fully expecting this giant, intimidating hockey player to judge him for wearing full, flawless makeup. Fabian physically straightens up, his own armor sliding into place, daring Ryan to say something derogatory about it. And what does Ryan do?
He completely diffuses the tension. He's unfazed. He just gives this shy, warm smile and says, "You look good." It totally disarms Fabian.
To understand why a simple "you look good" is so monumental to Fabian, we have to look back at their shared history in Halifax. Back when Ryan was 17, he billeted with Fabian's parents.
For those who might not know, billeting is when a local family hosts a junior hockey player.
Right, thank you. And the family dynamics in that house were incredibly damaging to a young Fabian.
Let's talk about those parents because it's genuinely heartbreaking. Fabian's parents absolutely idolized the hypermasculine hockey players who stayed with them. They essentially looked at these transient teenage athletes as the sons they always wanted.
Which is so painful.
Right. And this created a massive, painful wedge between them and their actual son, Fabian, who was this gender-fluid, artistic, musical kid.
Imagine the psychological toll of that on a teenager. Fabian felt entirely alienated in his own home. He watched his parents fawn over these boys who represented everything he wasn't. Because of that, Fabian assumed all these hockey players were homophobic bullies who would have tormented him if they didn't happen to live under the same roof.
So he built a wall.
He built a massive wall of thorns around himself. He was prickly, grumpy, and dismissed the jocks before they could dismiss him.
Except for Ryan. There's this one specific memory that Fabian holds on to. Ryan was the only hockey player who was ever kind to him. In fact, Ryan was the only person who actually attended Fabian's violin recital.
That detail is so telling.
His own family didn't go because there was a junior hockey game that night. But Ryan, the star hockey player, the very reason the parents were skipping the recital, skipped his own game to sit in the back of an auditorium to watch Fabian play the violin.
It's a beautiful subversion of expectations. Fabian had his defenses all the way up, but Ryan completely bypassed that wall of thorns. Not by forcing his way through, not by being aggressive, but just by his quiet, gentle nature.
Fabian describes him like a big, sweet dog.
Exactly. They would just sit at the kitchen table doing homework in comfortable silence, and for the first time in his own house, Fabian felt safe. Ryan provided a sanctuary of non-judgment.
What's fascinating here is how Ryan views Fabian in return. When they reconnect at the pharmacy in Toronto, Ryan isn't just being polite when he says Fabian looks good. He is utterly mesmerized by him.
He really is.
Ryan admits later that he always admired Fabian's confidence. Even as a grumpy teenager in Halifax, Fabian possessed a bravery to just be himself, regardless of what his parents or society thought.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that Ryan looks at Fabian and sees everything he wishes he could be. Ryan hides. Fabian shines. Ryan molds himself to fit the violent expectations of his coach. Fabian paints his face and dares the world to look away.
The ultimate magnetism of opposites.
It really is. Ryan is drawn to Fabian's light because Ryan spends his entire life living in the dark, suffocating behind his visor.
That magnetism of opposites makes so much sense when you look at how Ryan is struggling in his private moments. We see this massive, physically imposing guy on the ice, but what is actually happening in his head when the helmet comes off?
It's dark.
The narrative takes us deep into the reality of clinical anxiety, and it does not treat it as a quirky character trait. It is a paralyzing clinical reality.
The most visceral example of this is the airplane scene. The depiction of Ryan's panic is incredibly grounded in reality. The team is flying to Nashville, and Ryan is absolutely terrified of flying. He isn't just a little nervous about turbulence. We get a front row seat to his internal terror.
He is running through mental checklists just to survive the takeoff.
Yeah.
He's actively avoiding looking at the bolts on the aircraft's exterior, trying not to think about how if one thin plate of metal fails, they will all die a fiery death.
That spiraling thought process.
Exactly. He feels like he is the only person on the plane who knows they are doomed, and he can't understand why the flight attendants and his teammates are so calm.
His coping mechanisms are so specific and, frankly, a bit heartbreaking. He is gripping a battered copy of Anne of Green Gables. Think about that imagery for a second.
It's striking.
A massive 260-pound NHL enforcer whose job is to literally punch people in the face, clinging to a story about a quiet, imaginative orphan finding a loving family in a rural setting. It highlights exactly where his soul truly resides.
He also texts his sister, Colleen, right before takeoff. He does it under the guise of just saying hi, but internally he's doing it because his anxiety is telling him it might be the last time he ever speaks to her.
It's so sad.
And he really relies on Wyatt Hayes, the backup goalie who sits next to him. Wyatt just chatters away about the weather and comic books, and Ryan just grits his teeth and tells him to keep talking to distract him.
It's a brilliant depiction of how exhausting it is to constantly battle your own brain while trying to appear normal to your coworkers. And that anxiety and the medication required to manage it bleeds into every single aspect of his life, particularly intimacy.
Right, there is a very vulnerable scene early in the narrative where Ryan is alone in his bedroom.
He's attempting to achieve climax, and he really struggles. He's watching a video, and it's explicitly stated that he is having a difficult time because of the side effects of his anxiety medication. The SSRIs make it incredibly hard for him to get off.
This portrayal is vital. We are so conditioned by sports media and pop culture to think of pro athletes as these physically flawless, effortlessly potent virile figures.
Well, like they're supposed to be machines of peak performance in every arena.
Exactly. But Ryan is lying there,
Yeah.
and his self-deprecating thoughts are profound. He looks at himself and thinks he has an ugly dick. He calls himself a shaggy oaf. He compares himself to the flawless porn star on his screen and feels entirely inadequate.
His physical strength on the ice absolutely does not translate to confidence in his own skin. And it's interesting who he's watching in that video.
Camille Cock.
Right. A porn star named Camille Cock, who is small, slim, a bit femme, with a peacock feather tattoo and elaborate rings. Ryan's type is androgynous, confident men. He is drawn to those who blur the lines.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of Ryan's life, his attraction to Fabian makes perfect sense. Ryan feels so constrained by the incredibly rigid, hyper-masculine box of the NHL. He isn't allowed to blur any lines.
No, he has to be the most masculine, aggressive version of a man possible. So he is intensely attracted to men who exist entirely outside of that box. Men who confidently adorn themselves and challenge societal norms. He loves them because they represent a freedom he doesn't feel he has a right to claim.
But we do see him take a tentative step toward that freedom. Let's talk about when these two worlds actually collide, and Ryan enters the LGBTQ village in Toronto. Fabian mentions he has a music gig at a bar called The Lighthouse, which is a fundraiser in the village.
And Ryan has a choice to make.
Right. Ryan has this mandatory feeling team night out with his hockey teammates, but he decides to skip it to go to this gig.
This is a massive risk for Ryan. He is stepping out of his carefully controlled environment and into Fabian's territory, and the visual here is fantastic. Ryan shows up to this queer indie music gig wearing a tailored suit.
He's so out of place.
Completely. He's towering over everyone, looking like a massive wall of muscle and formal wear amidst a sea of casual, artsy queer folks. But he so desperately wants to support Fabian, he just sits there quietly at a table, drinking tea.
It's here that we are introduced to Fabian's found family, his friends Vanessa, Tarek, and Marcus. They are unapologetic, vibrant, fiercely protective of Fabian, and openly queer. Vanessa runs a sex-positive shop. Marcus is a former exotic dancer and bartender. Tarek is incredibly warm and observant.
They are the absolute antithesis of a hockey locker room.
Totally. And they immediately clock Ryan as a massive hockey player, which puts them instantly on high alert. Fabian's friends know how much Fabian hates hockey players, and they know the kind of culture those players usually represent. They assume Ryan is just some straight aggressive jock who wandered in and is maybe messing with Fabian. They start subtly grilling him at the table.
And then Ryan just casually blurts out, "I'm gay."
The reaction is priceless.
It is. Fabian is shocked. Not necessarily just because Ryan is gay, which he might have suspected given Ryan's demeanor, but because a hockey player can be openly out, even quietly, while actively playing in the NHL.
Ryan clarifies that he's quietly out. He doesn't hide it, but he doesn't broadcast it, mostly because he gets traded so often he never forms deep bonds with his teammates anyway. But this conversation opens up a fascinating look at the hierarchy of gay acceptance in professional sports.
Yes, the hockey boyfriend phenomenon.
They discuss other gay players in the league, like Shane Hollander, who famously kissed his boyfriend on live television after winning the Stanley Cup, and Scott Hunter. But Ryan explicitly points out that he feels inadequate compared to them. He says, "I'm the other one, the not hot one."
It is a devastatingly honest assessment of his own social capital. Ryan points out that the boyfriends of those NHL superstars are all very masculine. They fit a certain mold that is palatable to the straight, male-dominated sports world. Ryan assumes that only the masculine boyfriends of the absolute best players in the league are granted acceptance.
If you are a grinder, a fourth-line enforcer who is barely holding onto a roster spot, and your partner is an indie musician who wears glitter eyeshadow and paints his nails, Ryan fears that won't be accepted at all.
The underlying message is that queer acceptance in sports is highly conditional. It is conditional on exceptional athletic performance and strict adherence to masculine norms.
Precisely. Ryan knows his value to the team is entirely based on his willingness to sacrifice his body. He doesn't have the points or the star power to challenge the culture. And if he rocks the boat by bringing a gender non-conforming partner around, he fears he will lose the only career he has ever known.
After the gig, we get this hilarious, sweet image of giant Ryan carrying Fabian's heavy keyboard, the stand, and a backpack full of beer, walking Fabian home through the village. It's this incredibly tender moment of service and protection.
But it's shadowed by the reality of what Ryan goes back to the next day. This brings us to the actual cost of being the tough guy. The narrative does not shy away from the brutality of Ryan's job. There is a visceral scene where Ryan is on the ice and the crowd starts chanting, "Pay."
Right.
Price,
Right, it's a play on his last name, Price.
demanding that he make the opposing team pay for some perceived slight. When that chant starts, the expectation for the coach, the fans, and his teammates is that Ryan will fight.
But the dissonance here is staggering. Ryan doesn't want to hurt anyone. The scene describes him fighting a young 22-year-old rookie from Minnesota named Corkum. Ryan knows Corkum is just a kid trying to make a name for himself by taking on the veteran enforcer. So what does Ryan do?
He pulls his punches.
He actively pulls his punches. He literally aims his fists at the hard plastic of Corkum's shoulder pads so he doesn't break the kid's face.
He is essentially a proxy gladiator. He is performing violence to satiate the crowd, but he feels sick at the thought of causing real, lasting pain. Yet his entire career, his financial stability, is predicated on his willingness to engage in this theater of brutality.
And then we are introduced to the tragedy of Duncan Harvey. Duncan is an aging enforcer from Minnesota. When Ryan looks at Duncan, he is looking at the ghost of Christmas future.
Duncan is the physical manifestation of the toll this specific job takes. He is described as having deep bags under his eyes, looking feral, sweating before the game even starts. He is clearly unwell, desperate, and struggling with the cumulative effects of brain trauma and likely addiction, which is tragically common for enforcers.
Ryan recognizes this desperation immediately. During the warm-ups, Ryan skates over to Duncan and quietly says, "We don't have to fight tonight." He is trying to offer this man an out. He is trying to de-escalate.
But Duncan can't take the out. Duncan's entire identity and his spot on the roster is wrapped up in being the tough guy. If he doesn't fight, he has no value. So later in the game, Duncan shoves Ryan, demanding a fight. Ryan refuses. He drops his gloves to show he won't engage. And then, completely unprovoked, Duncan violently headbutts Ryan.
It's a shocking, dirty move. The front of Duncan's helmet smashes into Ryan's mouth and chin. Ryan's mouth immediately fills with blood. The instinct for any player, especially an enforcer, would be to retaliate, to absolutely destroy the guy who just cheap-shotted you. But Ryan's response is incredible.
He grabs Duncan's wrists.
He wrestles his arms down, drops them, and simply skates away. He refuses to retaliate. It is a profound moment of nonviolence in a hyper-violent arena. He absorbs the blow and refuses to continue the cycle.
But the fallout from his own team is immediate and brutal. Coach Cooper calls Ryan into the dressing room and furiously lays into him. He tells Ryan that he has plenty of younger, faster guys in the minor leagues who would gladly do Ryan's job. He tells Ryan to his face that he is entirely replaceable if he won't fight.
Coach Cooper makes a subtext text, "Ryan is a disposable commodity." And the physical trauma of these games leads directly to the emotional climax between Ryan and Fabian.
The Toradol argument.
Yes. A few weeks later, Ryan's back is severely injured. He's hobbling around his apartment, clearly in agonizing pain, but he insists he has to play the next game. Fabian is there trying to help him and discovers the extent of what Ryan is doing to stay on the ice.
Fabian learns that Ryan is taking Toradol injections. For those listening who might not be familiar with sports medicine, when Fabian realizes Ryan is relying on these powerful numbing injections just to survive a game, it triggers a massive fight.
Fabian is horrified. He realizes that Ryan's team doctor is shooting him up with drugs just so he can go get knocked around the ice for a couple of hours, risk further permanent damage, and then take pills afterward for the residual pain. Fabian realizes he cannot stand by and watch Ryan destroy his body and his mind for a sport that Ryan himself admits he hates.
Fabian asks him the logical question, why won't you just let yourself heal? Take time off. But Ryan, feeling incredibly defensive, cornered, and terrified of losing his roster spot, yells, "Hockey is all I am."
That line is a dagger. Hockey is all I am. It shows how deeply the conditioning goes. Ryan refuses to believe he has value outside of his ability to take a punch. He says he has no other options, no other skills. And this fundamental disagreement leads to the heartbreak of their breakup.
Fabian leaves. And it's important to note, he doesn't leave because he doesn't love Ryan. He leaves because he loves him too much to watch him self-destruct. Fabian says, "I can't watch you hurt yourself." Or anyone else. It's a devastating boundary to have to draw.
It brings up a really complex dynamic. Is there a difference between supporting a partner and enabling them?
Room.
Is loving someone supporting them no matter what, even if their career is literally killing them? Fabian decides that his continued presence would be an endorsement of Ryan's self-destruction. So he removes himself. It leaves Ryan entirely isolated, battling his physical pain, his broken heart, and his anxiety with sleeping pills.
Which brings us to the breaking point of the narrative, the awakening. While Ryan is recovering during the All-Star break, he gets a phone call from Wyatt, the backup goalie. Duncan Harvey, the aging enforcer who headbutted Ryan, has been found dead. It's a suicide by overdose.
It is a dark, tragic mirror held up directly to Ryan's face. Duncan Harvey represents the terrifying, inevitable end of the line for enforcers. When the sport is done wringing them dry, when they can no longer fight, when their brains are damaged and their bodies are broken and the cheering stops, they are simply discarded.
And the funeral scene perfectly encapsulates that abandonment. Ryan drives out to the service, and the room is half empty. Scarcely any NHL players attend. Even Duncan's own team captain isn't there because he's busy at the All-Star Game festivities.
It is a lonely, quiet end.
It's awful. For a man who spent his entire life bleeding for the entertainment of thousands, Ryan sits in the back row, swallowing his anger, realizing that hockey has completely abandoned Duncan.
The institution of hockey took everything from Duncan and gave nothing back when he needed it most. But then, in the midst of this bleak realization, we get a surprise appearance. Someone sits down right next to Ryan in the back row.
Yes, it's Ilya Rozanov. For fans of Rachel Reid's universe, this is a massive crossover cameo. Ilya Rozanov is a flashy, confident, slightly obnoxious superstar. He's the exact opposite of a grinder like Duncan. Yet he is at this empty funeral for a guy he barely knew.
And why is he there? Because Ilya lost his own mother to depression and suicide. He understands the toll of mental illness intimately. He recognizes the tragedy of Duncan's death in a way the hockey establishment refuses to. And Ilya provides the critical intervention Ryan needs at this exact moment.
The camp.
Right. Ilya tells Ryan that he and Shane Hollander are starting a new charity youth hockey camp focused on tolerance, inclusion, and mental health. And Ilya explicitly asks Ryan to come and coach the defenseman.
Ryan is stunned. He assumed Ilya is mocking him. He says, I don't want to teach kids how to fight. And Ilya looks at him like he's stupid and says, no, you are a defenseman. You will teach them how to stand still and not score goals. Defenseman thinks. It's a funny moment, but it's also incredibly validating.
It's deeply validating. Ilya is telling Ryan that his value is in his hockey knowledge, his understanding of the game, not his fists. Furthermore, Ilya makes a point to say that the camp is about tolerance, explicitly noting that Ryan's perspective as a gay man is needed and valued. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this moment provides Ryan with an exit strategy.
Yes. As Ryan drives back to Toronto, he has an epiphany. He realizes he has quite a bit of money saved. He owns an expensive apartment he can sell. He is only 31 years old. He doesn't have to be a human punching bag anymore. The realization hits him like a freight train. There's literally nothing stopping him from walking away.
He begins to reclaim his identity, and we actually see the seeds of this reclamation a bit earlier. Before he officially quits, he starts setting boundaries. There's a brilliant scene where he finally stands up to Dallas Kent in the locker room.
Oh, that scene is so satisfying. Dallas is making his usual homophobic comments, and Ryan stands up to his full 6'7" height and announces to the entire room, just so you know, I'm gay. I have a problem with you saying homophobic shit about anyone. I don't want to hear it again. And the room goes dead silent. Dallas, the arrogant superstar, backs down immediately.
That was a crucial turning point. Ryan finally realized his own power. For years, he used his physical intimidation to hurt people on the ice because he was told to. In that locker room, he used his presence not to inflict violence, but to protect himself and his community. He established a boundary. And now, following the funeral and the offer from Ilya, he takes the final, ultimate step. He quits the NHL.
He decides to let his coach call up a young rookie from the minors to take his place. Ryan is done paying the price. Which brings us to the healing and the happily ever after. Ryan doesn't just quit and disappear into the woods. He goes to find Fabian.
He seeks out Fabian at his album release party. It's a massive venue, the biggest Fabian has ever played, packed with his vibrant queer community. Ryan shows up not to win Fabian back through some grand, manipulative, romantic gesture, but simply to tell him the truth. He tells Fabian that he has quit hockey, but crucially, he emphasizes that he didn't do it for Fabian. He did it for himself. He realized Fabian was right. The sport was destroying him, and he wanted to live.
I love that distinction. By saying, I didn't do it for you, it removes the burden of guilt from Fabian. Fabian doesn't have to carry the weight of being the reason Ryan gave up $1 million career. And Fabian takes accountability too. He apologizes for running away when Ryan needed support the most, acknowledging that his own fears and past traumas blinded him to what Ryan was going through.
They meet in the middle. They recognize each other's fears and each other's incredible braveries. The aftermath of this reconciliation is so beautiful to witness. We see Ryan's physical healing begin. He tells Fabian he hasn't taken a painkiller in over a week. He is finally letting his body rest and repair.
And the humor returns. They're lying in bed, and Fabian jokingly asks a very important question. What happens to your thighs after you stop playing hockey? And Ryan deadpans, they'll probably turn into regular thighs. And Fabian pretends to be absolutely devastated by this tragic loss. It's such a warm, intimate moment.
It shows that the armor is finally off. Ryan is no longer the autumnal Hagrid hiding in a toque or the terrifying enforcer waiting for the chant to start. He is just a man, deeply in love, comfortable in his own skin, and looking toward a future he actually wants.
We get this final, beautiful image that ties everything together. Ryan takes the coaching job to youth camp. He's walking down the hall with some paperwork, and he accidentally catches Ilya Rozanoff and Shane Hollander making out in an office, which is just a hilarious payoff for the fans of the broader universe. But the real emotional payoff is Ryan meeting Fabian at a hotel shortly after, and Fabian pulling out his phone to show Ryan pictures of a townhouse for sale right in the heart of the LGBTQ village in Toronto. They are going to buy a house together. Ryan is finally home.
It is a profound journey of self-actualization. Both Ryan and Fabian had to confront the ghosts of their pasts and the toxic environments that shaped them to finally carve out a space where they could exist authentically together.
Wow, what a journey. Listeners, I want you to consider the core message of the story we've unpacked today. True toughness isn't about taking a punch on the ice, and it certainly isn't about hiding your anxiety behind a stoic, bearded face. True toughness is having the courage to walk away from an identity that destroys you, even when it's the only identity you've ever known and the only thing society values you for. It is daring to embrace the people and the glitter and the peace that actually bring you joy.
To leave you with a final thought to mull over today, in a society that constantly rewards us for sacrificing our physical and mental well-being for the sake of our careers or for the entertainment and convenience of others, what is the hockey in your life? And more importantly, what would happen if you simply decided to unlace your skates and walk away?
A brilliant question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found some nuggets of insight to take with you and maybe a little courage to examine your own armor. Until next time, take care of yourselves.